is going on, Sub Summit? It is Eric Van Holtz back again with another e-commerce conversations. Hope all is well on the other side of the stage. Across from me, in person, I got Eric. What's up, man?
Hey, thanks for having me. We've done this before, but of course it was over the internet.
Yeah.
So I'm here in person.
We're doing a live show here at Sub Summit up in Kansas City. Eric and I go back many years. We've actually collaborated on some products. We'll talk about that in a bit. But for those who are not familiar with you, who the heck are you and what the heck do you do?
I'm a guy, just a guy. In the past decade, I've been running a couple different direct-to-consumer brands, one of which is called Brio. That's where Eric and I have kind of overlapped in the men's grooming space. That is mostly trimmers, some other tools. And then more recently, I've been putting a lot of my time toward Ollie, which is our oral care brand. So those are the two things that have been kind of taking up my time.
So we've got trimmers. We call them beard clippers, I guess. Products with a lot of names.
You're in the barber realm too.
Yeah.
So in the barber world,
I guess technically they're a little bit different, but we did a unique colorway. The problem with Brio is the product lasts forever.
It's a major problem, and it's honestly one of the reasons why I've been a little more focused on Ollie recently. So from an e-com perspective, Brio had pretty good initial order value. People love the product. It lasts really long, so they don't have to come back and really buy anything else. I mean, there's obviously some blades. We have some other tools like the nose hair trimmer's fairly popular. But really what we found is that it was very hard to take that initial customer and turn them into anything that was like a higher LTV, like a higher long-term value. So it's always been incremental, and I've kind of known that's a challenge for the brand. And probably one of the reasons I've been a little more focused on Ollie, just because that brand does not have those problems. It's very different. So lower initial order value. I mean, we're talking about essentially toothpaste, mouthwash, whitening strips, but all of these are replenishable products, things that literally I hope you're using every day, right?
Yeah.
So it really makes it a lot easier to have a higher long-term value for the customers, which of course makes the whole marketing cycle a lot easier.
I want to dig into kind of like as an owner operator, as an entrepreneur, a lot of us, we're quote unquote ideas people or ideas guys, and we see problems everywhere. We want to solve problems everywhere. We want to chase the what do they say? Chase the
shiny object.
Shiny object.
Lots of shiny objects here.
And because that is inherent to entrepreneurs, the message you always get is focus, like have the focus. And having a conversation with you months ago was really encouraging to that it's okay to have side projects, because I don't want to take the words out of your mouth, but you basically said like shots on the
Yeah, and this is a conversation, so you can take the words. So the way I think that's the hardest thing is, what is a distraction versus an opportunity? And then my stupid way of thinking about this, if I'm able to get at-bats with products, so I guess what I mean by that is essentially an at-bat is like trying something out, bringing something to market. And if I can do that cost effectively so that if it fails, I'm not ruined. And if you have enough chances, you can then essentially, at some point, find that thing that's going to work. And so that's the key, I guess, is knowing, well, what is a distraction versus an opportunity? I wish I had an answer to that. I'm not sure I do.
Well, you mentioned failure. So like if it fails, it's not going to put us out of business. Do you plan what that failure is before you launch? Be like, all right, I want to launch a new whitening strip. I don't know if it's going to hit. I can afford buying 1,000 units of it. If I don't sell them, I'll just throw them away, or I'll just call up TJ Maxx. Like, do you think about that, or you're just like, I got 1,000 orders, I'm just going to sell it and lose money on the selling process?
Yeah, no, great question. I'm terrible at this. So ideally there would be a plan, right? And I think there are some people that do operate like that. For us, what failure looks like is like developing a product, launching it, seeing how that goes, making content, maybe if it's still not going well, there's some tweaks. And then from there, it's like a slow death, where it's like, hopefully we didn't have a lot of inventory or whatever, but that's kind of what the process has looked like for me. And the good part about that is that it's not a huge dollar expense. Like if it's selling slowly but still selling, it's inconvenient, but it's not like detrimental. But it can also be distracting because these things like carry on and persist when they shouldn't.
Yeah.
So great example for that. I ran a cookware brand called Marquette Castings, and we made, I believe, the best cast iron skillets in the world. The market didn't agree per se, and it was a challenging product to make. It's a lot of challenges, but we dragged that on for a long time.
Yeah,
and probably not ideal. I think there's probably better ways to do that, but so long as I didn't feel like it was slowing me down too much or like really dragging too much resources from the company, that's kind of how I justified it.
Yeah, it kind of like it depends on your product. Cast irons. The good things with that is like they're not going to go bad. They'll last forever. Mm-hmm. Maybe they get a little rusty or something, but you probably oil them up to prevent that. We've had kind of the issue can become like you change your logo, like so you get kind of trapped into your branding or your packaging or your design and stuff like that if your inventory is not turning quick enough. How many projects will you have going on at once? What is your right amount?
I'm not sure, honestly. It kind of depends on where the excitement is and what's working at that time. Hopefully not more than, I feel like at a time, I'm generally not focused on more than like one or two products. Because that's the other thing too. Like, I'm talking about this from a multiple brand perspective, but you really almost have to look at it at a per product perspective, because like right now when we're launching something or trying to do something meaningful, the amount of content that we have to create to support a single product is immense. Like to answer that question, there is no amount of content that is enough.
Yeah.
So, and when you do that, of course, you're just taking resources away from your own team. You're kind of robbing from here and over here instead of maximizing something else. So I'm not claiming to be good at that. I'm not claiming to have an answer. Fewer is better. I really have been trying to embrace the focus thing. I see value there, but
I think that's really an interesting perspective in product launches, because I think, from my mindset, especially historically, I'll think about like our core product was beard oil. So it's like, oh, a beard oil, I want to have a beard balm, I want to have a mustache wax, I want to have, a wash, a softener, all these things that, they'll come in, they'll get the beard oil, and then I can sell my customers these other things. But almost when you think about that, you're not thinking about building out a series of hero products. You're thinking about how you have a single hero product and then supporting stuff. But those supporting ones take as much work and headaches to keep an inventory, to manage, to make sure they don't.
Now, so here's a crazy win here that goes right into that I never would have guessed. So once I started focusing a bit more on Ollie, I had this grand idea of having a quarterly subscription, right? Influenced by all these subscription people who say subscriptions are the best thing in the world. And so the concept was, okay, everything you need for your oral care routine delivered in a box quarterly shows up in your door. I thought it was a good idea. I'm not sure the market thought it was a good idea. I think it was missing a lot of like key elements of like what is the hero product and all that stuff. But so the cool thing is that in the process of developing that, making that happen, we started researching and learning about formulating toothpaste. And I never at the time thought that the toothpaste would be a vehicle to acquire customers. Like for whatever reason, I didn't think we could do it. Maybe I didn't think about it enough. I didn't look at the market enough. But once we got, knee deep into formulations and like understanding what exists, what the market looks like, what are good ingredients, what are bad ingredients, it became really clear that like, okay, there's actually something here. So in a way, one of my distractions, fumbled its way into being a hero product. It's allowed us to get to where we are now.
you've mentioned this a few times, like the market didn't think it was right. How do you know or have that feeling that you missed the mark in the market, or if you just need to tweak your messaging or tweak your hook, tweak your angle? And how long do you give that runway to seeing success of a product or failure of a product before you're like, yeah, we just missed the mark, or the market wasn't ready for what we were offering?
Yeah, so I think as long as you're making changes, as long as you know what to do next, then I think you need to keep going. But if you get to a point where you're like, geez, I've been pounding my head against the wall, I don't know what to change here, maybe that's a good time to stop. But for us, like with the toothpaste, the way it worked was we launched our formula, and I think we got more traction initially than we thought. And this wasn't anything crazy. It was literally just like I'd call it like a small signal, right? But a lot of the customers were saying like, hey, this would be great if it didn't have fluoride. And at the time, I was, kind of on the fence of like, well, I don't know if that's the best thing to do based on what I know about this. So we didn't launch with fluoride free. But after that, we got so many requests for that as essentially a different product, and then realized, okay, well, that's kind of where the market is. Like these people are way more concerned with cleaner ingredients. So there were things we could remove from our formula. We're like, do we need titanium dioxide? No, it just makes it whiter. Like there's no value.
It just colors.
It's just a colorant. Yeah. There's no value. So we then kind of went back through and like, okay, let me look at it from that frame. We're going to go fluoride free. We're upping our hydroxy up to 10%. Sorry, I'm talking a different language at this point.
Yeah, no.
Making these formula improvements, and then it wasn't until we launched that it really started to take off. So back to your question, I think it's iterative, and I think listening to the customers is super key, because they'll generally tell you where you want to go. One caveat there, I'll throw this out there because it's really nuanced into what you hear from customers. With the cookware line, we had people fanatical about like, you have to make this stuff in the USA. And they were like, do it. So I did. Okay. Yeah. It was really hard. Like I spent years working on the supply chain, working on these products, and we came out with an amazing product that was also fairly expensive, and people did not buy it. So I would throw that out there as like a caveat of like, people do have to vote with their wallets at some point. And that was one that people just did not follow up the way that I would have thought they did.
Yeah, I mean, it's or if you do it, you have to really build the brand in a different way that has a luxury experience to it. And,
yeah. And you know what? And that's, I think, probably where it was my fault, because when, at the time, that's when like, Yeti coolers kind of came onto the scene and created this category of the $500 cooler that never existed.
Crazy, right?
So it's like, dude, if that can exist, why can this not? And I'm just from a step back perspective, I think like when you look at a Yeti cooler, you can really see that it's different. Like you just have to see a picture and you immediately know. You're like, okay, that thing's built differently. And I don't think that happened with the cookware line. I just don't think that resonated. You're like, you look at it and you're like, what's the difference?
Yeah. So. All right. So we're kind of feeling it out. One of the things that we talked about last night, we met up, was a lot of basically like feeling. Like, do you feel interest in it? Like, versus, is it a distraction or is it not? Is basically, am I excited to do this?
Excitement. Yeah, that was the word I think I was keying in on. It's like, if you're really looking forward to it and I think I've thought about this a few ways. And like, when that happens to me, if I feel excitement about a product or something, it's because I think it's an opportunity. It's because like somewhere I'm sensing like, oh, there's something here. And that's kind of what's driving the excitement. So hard to quantify.
What are the things that you hate about your business? Like customer service or operations or marketing? Like what things kind of like zap energy out of you?
Ooh. Sales tax.
Yeah. You haven't gotten on with a numeral yet?
Oh man. Yeah, that kind of compliance stuff.
Yeah.
I'm really not good at HR. We're at a point where we probably need someone to do that, and I'm, luxury. Our director of operations is pretty good at that. So I'd say like those are the core things that I probably am the worst at, and just again sap the energy out of me. That the things that I enjoy the most are creative problems.
Yeah.
That's what I love doing. If it's a product, so basically all my time right now is between product development, which I feel is somewhat creative, and marketing. I've really loved writing scripts for short form video. It's like been really fun for me.
Yeah. We are here at the Sub Summit, so it makes sense to talk about what is your strategy? How do you approach subscription? How do you minimize churn and set the expectation for customers to become lifetime customers?
Yeah. So I think a lot of this goes back to the product line. And I mean, I wish I could say I did this on purpose of like, literally a product you should be using twice a day, like every single day. Like I think I just kind of got lucky from that perspective that it's just a really perfect product to have a very regular, order delivery cycle. So really leaning into that, I think, we've talked a lot on a lot of different angles of that concept of churn and how do you maximize this and maximize that. I mean, for me, and I think you're the same too, it's like, I think we just go back to this product needs to be really good. And, Eric, I think your stance on this, you'd said earlier, you're like, I almost don't need them to be subscribers so long as they're loving the product and returning customers. So, I'm sure there's some metrics that might argue against that. And I'm sure it's, it's a little nuanced, but I'm on board. Like, I think just making the product, like it's the product that sells the subscription. So
yeah, I would agree and slightly like push back on that too, because like you do offer incentives for subscriptions.
Yeah.
Right. And you offer bundles. So you are telling them like, hey, I do prefer for you to be on subscription. I'll give you a little discount. So there is a little benefit. I think where a lot of operators, and maybe this is the point you're trying to make, is a lot of operators will get too consumed with like tactics to minimize churn when what they really need to be thinking about is how do I make my product so amazing that my customers don't want to leave.
100%. Yeah. And there's always tactics to try. I've learned a lot of good ones in the last couple days, right? So that is something I think everyone has to pay attention to, just in terms of making sure from a customer perspective everything's working correctly. Shopping your own store. What happens when I do this? What does this interface look like? Where can I add upsells? Like, there's a lot to that. I mean, it's certainly important, but I think I view that as like the blocking and tackling of running an e-com brand. There's a lot of tools that automate a lot of this. It's like they're not the hardest problems to solve. So, they don't end up taking a ton of my time and thought. I mean, maybe at some point, I probably need a better process for revisiting this and checking things and whatnot. But for me, I think it's like just goes back to the product.
I think there's, I don't know if you've thought about this or not. There's this incentive to get customers to buy as much product as possible. It's to our benefit as e-commerce brands. To lower our costs, and it's to their benefit as well as they save money on shipping. The downside is you create a less habitual process to ordering. So it no longer becomes like, oh yeah, it's once a month I've got to order my toothpaste. It's like, oh, I've got enough toothpaste to last for 6 months. And they're like, oh, I got another tube. Turns out I don't have another tube. I need to brush my teeth. So they run to the pharmacy and grab something, and then they lose track of that. Is that something that's of concern to you, or have you?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the challenges of us being D2C, just relying on our website and Amazon. I mean, I think Amazon does a good job picking up the slack on the convenience side, just because of our mutual addiction to free, like, one-day shipping, in many cases. And then also that little pandemic thing slid in there and made people buy toothpaste and stuff like that online. So I think there's a little pull forward, I think, with some of that like acceptance. But I do believe that at some point in the future, we probably have to be sitting on a retail shelf if we want to achieve some level of scale, because that is where the majority of this product is purchased. And we can only ignore that for so long.
Have you gotten to the point where you have retailers reaching out to you wanting to carry your product, or are
No.
you still pretty unseen?
No, I need to figure out how I need to tackle that, to be honest. I mean, it's a whole giant realm that I know very little about.
Yeah.
And I know tactically there's a lot of ways to do it, in terms of distributors or like having in-house people, or like who we're even trying to go towards. Do we smart with like small grocery chains in the Pacific Northwest, versus pharmacy?
Do you feel like there's a limited window for capturing market share because your product is so innovative?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that quite a bit, actually. I think there is, right? Because there's only so much room on the shelf. And like as of right now, there is not another 10% hydroxyapatite formula in any retailer, like in mass. So I think that's opportunity for sure. And yeah, if I wait too long, that window could absolutely close.
Yeah. So when you see so many opportunities, like I got to get into wholesale, I've got to boost my subscription, I've got to build out my product line. How do you identify how to prioritize these things within your business? Because you're bootstrapped, right?
Yeah.
You're not sitting on $50 million investment.
And that's the other thing is, I think you and I both have been in a place where we're often competing with people who don't necessarily care about profitable sales, and that's kind of the reality of the marketplaces that they're what's the word I'm looking for? Like you have to bid, right? Like a Facebook is a bidding platform where you're not just competing against people in your industry. You're competing against everyone for those impressions. So people can have drastically different business models, but you still have to be competitive there. So I think that plays in too.
Yeah. Do you also like grapple with the idea that I could miss it, but basically I kept the company. I didn't have to deal with investors. I made that trade-off. And is that something that your ego can handle? Like passing up on $1 billion business?
Yeah. No, it's a good question. I think it mostly has to do with speed. It's like how quickly do we need to get there? Because I'm not sure not having investors would keep us out of retail, for example. And I didn't do a good job answering your last question either. But like in terms of prioritizing those steps and figuring that out, for me, like I think I've just spent enough time kind of thinking about what that future looks like that I've kind of made some decisions in my mind, whether they're right or wrong. And so for me, I think like we've got a lot of room to grow with Meta, like just using that as our primary customer acquisition vehicle. We've got 2 other products that are like very promising in terms of making them work through that as well, the enzyme-based whitening strips and the mouthwash. And then the next priority for me would be building out an army of affiliates on TikTok Shop. So like, I think that's the priority over brick and mortar, but we can also start testing brick and like, we don't have to try and nationwide rollout day one, right? So I that's why I kind of need to learn the nuances of actually what retail distribution looks like and understanding how to start small and how we get it right. Because I mean, the one thing that I do understand about retail is like, if we get on a store shelf and it doesn't move, everyone else who's in the retail world making decisions about whether or not we're a viable product will look at and scrutinize that data. So if we mess up the first one, you're like locked out. So I take that seriously, and I want to make sure we're at a point where our content development, engine, our content team can support that, both from an impressions perspective and potentially a paid media perspective.
Yeah, I would say I would see a lot of challenges in this idea of starting small and getting data, because small and large are completely different strategies. So you're not really
That's true.
training the right muscles that you need. My unsolicited feedback would be, I think you're in the right path, trying to develop the top of funnel with TikTok shops and Meta, bring awareness to the brand where you're in such a position, you're so desirable that the large companies can't not contact you. So you're no longer going to them and pitching and trying to get shelf space. They're opening it up for you, and you're on their radar, and they're kind of positioning you to come in. And then they'll give you, or at least in our experience in working with Target was, they wanted to see us succeed. They wanted to help us out. They wanted us to point us in the right direction, even though we had never done this before.
Yeah. Did they reach out to you?
Yeah. So what kind of happens is the Target buyer works with a market maker or like a kind of an in between, and I forget the name of what they're called, but they'll basically be this intermediary between you and Target. And then what I notice is all of a sudden, kind of out of the blue, a bunch of those companies would hit us up and talk to us about, like, let's get into Target. So what I think is happening is the buyer's talking to these and it's like, oh, here's some brands that I think are cool if you want to help get us in. And then you've got to decide which kind of agency to work with. And they'll take, like 5% cut. And then Target. I mean, every product category may have like different margins, but.
Yeah. So I have some learning to do there. That's my homework.
Yeah.
Because I think it's going to be important, and I don't think it's avoidable. And, ultimately, I think it's a great channel because what we've learned so far with scaling ads and just doing larger scale, media buying is that spillover effect and this true like multi-channel effect. Because I think in the early days, e-com guys are just like looking at the ROAS, like how is that campaign performing? How is this ad set working? What's the return? But it doesn't take very long to get to a point where that level of analysis isn't working anymore when these ads are driving, massive sales on Amazon as a platform. So, basically, since we're accounting for all of that, it really lets us see the full picture. And I do believe that as we bring more channels online, that halo effect applies to those channels. So, essentially, we're able, I think, anyway, this is the thesis, that we'll be able to, at some level of scale, whether that's now or in the future, get more overall sales out of the same ad spend when we're just in more channels.
I want to kind of circle back to the earlier days of Ollie. You and I have a mutual friend, Aaron Marino. You bought the company from him. Can you walk me through that process? Did you mention it to him? Did you want to buy it to him? Or, and then how did you see the vision for the company? Because it's become something completely different than what you bought.
Yeah. And I think it just goes back to my concept of at-bats. Like, how do I take another swing at this? When I had started out, we were already sort of in the oral care space with the sonic toothbrush. So it seemed like a reasonable thing at the time. I fumbled it quite a bit from the get-go in terms of what I did with the brand and like just some key decisions that were poor.
Because it was like originally just white.
It was just whitening strips. Yeah. And then I tried to kind of cram it together with Brio on the same website. My thinking was like, oh my gosh, like I can't imagine creating all this content for two brands. Like, how stupid was that? Like it made no sense to put those together. But eventually I figured it out and, split them apart, and then still saw promise with the whitening strip as a key, core product. I mean, whitening is a big space. And I can still say, honestly, we're not doing a very good job exploiting that right now. Like, there's plenty of opportunity there. I think we have a super innovative product that no one else has with the enzyme-based whitening. So I think it's on the list. Like, that's kind of one of those three levers I was talking about, like going back to be able to make that work with Meta, because I think we'll get there. But yeah, there really wasn't a grand vision. I think, the more I learn about other people that kind of go through the same game that we're playing, is like no one knows what they're doing, and that's completely fine.
Yeah.
Like you're literally making decisions on a, month by month, year by year basis of what makes the most sense right now. And it's totally fine for that to change, because things, the world changes. So like we gotta change with it. And so I don't see that as like, I don't expect anyone to have like, let me put it this way. I've never really heard of a story of anyone having like a rock solid vision of something like this. And then 10 years later, they're still executing the exact same vision. Like it just doesn't ever seem to work like that.
Where can people buy your products?
Olliesmile.com. If you're into grooming tools.
How do you spell Ollie?
OLLIE. Thank
Okay.
you. Smile.com. And then Brio PG, if you need a good trimmer or nose hair trimmer, anything like that.
Are you on X, Twitter?
I am not. I am a social media abstainer.
Good for you. All right, so just go to his website, buy his products.
You can email me. Just say email me.
Okay.
That'll work.
This has been another e-commerce conversations. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. Cheers.
Thank you.
Keep on growing.